The greatest of monster movies are about more than carnage and mayhem. They utilize their creatures to explore ideas around the human experience, from our fears to our inner nature to our relationship with the world. The original King Kong is certainly one of these films, but what it has to say is not necessarily obvious. This video is the third and final part of an extensive review of King Kong. If you want to hear my thoughts on the quality of the film itself, go watch the previous two. This part is dedicated entirely to theme. I will address the popular interpretation of this film, then provide my own attempt at piecing together the puzzle that is King Kong. When asked what the meaning of King Kong is, the majority of film scholars will say it is an allegory for the destruction of nature at the hands of people who wish to exploit it. I will refer to this as the popular interpretation. It is certainly supported by the rest of the franchise. Aside from those that are purely light entertainment, every Kong follow-up jumps to this theme as the heart of the story. The 1976 remake is particularly blatant about this, changing the Carl Denham character from a filmmaker to the owner of an oil company, a profession despised by environmentalist Hollywood movies. This interpretation paints Kong as a victim, a misunderstood lonely creature who was abused and killed because he looked like a monster. Conversely, it makes Denham out to be the villain, a man whose greed blinded him to the suffering his actions inflicted on the natural world and his fellow humans. If the Kong series was exclusively the films released after Son of Kong, I would have no argument against this viewpoint. Pacco in King Kong vs. Godzilla nearly destroys Japan when he attempts to capture the berry juice-loving Kong as a publicity stunt. The Jack Black portrayal of Denham becomes an enemy of every other character in the movie because he sees no problem with sacrificing lives to imprisoning the peaceful animal. The Samuel L. Jackson character in Skull Island seeks to kill Kong as revenge for the deaths of his men, despite the fact that Kong only acted in self-defense. All of the King Kong movies fit into a clear mold. A selfishly motivated man sets the conflict into motion and endangers the other humans in his attempt to either manipulate or destroy a dangerous but inherently gentle creature that he only views as a monster. Every single King Kong storyline that attempts to have artistic merit religiously follows this archetype. Everyone, that is, except for the original film and its sequel. Before I attempt to debunk it, I will admit the popular interpretation is partially accurate. Denham's exploits have no boundaries, and he attempts to bend the world to his will, resulting in destruction for both sides of the conflict between man and nature. This is mostly consistent with the later entries in the series, but the big problem is it's only a sub-theme. Aside from the scene where Denham and the sailors kill a Stegosaurus, the idea of humans causing tragedy by abusing the natural world is entirely irrelevant until the last 20 minutes of the movie, when Kong is captured and brought to New York. The idea of this conflict being the central theme is questionable beyond its lack of presence. There are several elements of the film that directly contradict it. The two remakes of King Kong, which push the popular interpretation harder than any other Kong films, make dramatic changes to three pivotal characters: Carl Denham, Ann Darrow, and Kong himself. The original Carl Denham, for all the villainy his later portrayals indulge, isn't actually a villain, or even greedy. To clarify, a villain is a character in a story who opposes the protagonists, who in this case are Jack Driscoll and Ann Darrow. Denham sets the plot into motion, a role commonly filled by the antagonist, but he does so in a harmless, well-intentioned way, with the support of the protagonists, who remain his friends throughout the film. When they're put in danger, he does everything he can to help them. The closest he comes to being sinister is when he suggests using Anne as bait to trap Kong, but he is never given a chance to enact this plan. Greed is the primary characteristic attributed to this character by the popular interpretation, as well as the subsequent characters who supposedly fill his role. His motivation is wealth, and Kong, to him, is a means of acquiring it. Except, this isn't remotely applicable to the original Denham. Money is not important to him. It certainly isn't why he makes movies, otherwise he would film low-risk, crowd-pleasing love stories, instead of experimental, exotic adventures. He is a good businessman, but he makes money to fund his adventures, not the other way around. If you need further proof for this, just watch Son of Kong, where he is broke and content with it. The changes to Ann Darrow come through her relationship with Kong. In the remakes, she is initially afraid of him, but comes to understand him, forms a wholesome friendship, and sobs when he dies. The original Anne feels nothing but fear toward Kong. Along with making her something of an audience stand-in, these alterations allow her to take on the role of the allegorical environmentalist/conservationist. While seeing a human cry during Kong's death can trigger emotion in the viewer, I think it is far more devastating to watch Kong die, protecting a woman who hated him. On the surface, Kong's character seems consistent through the franchise. He's a lonely creature who becomes infatuated with a human woman. He is extremely protective of her, and, despite his capacity for violence, is gentle with her. His intelligence is impressive, but still has an animal's limits. Above all, he is a tragic character. But upon a closer look, it becomes apparent franchise Kong is not the same character as the original. The later iterations are inherently tranquil and only become violent when threatened. Their tragedy is that, because they look like a monster, they are treated as one. This allows for Kong to be sympathetic as a victim, and even a hero. This is not the original Kong. He is the driving antagonistic force of the movie. He is the villain. In every second of his screen time, he is actively opposing and endangering the protagonistic characters. His relationship with Anne is anything but wholesome, particularly from her perspective. The tenderness he shows her seems to be unusual, a fluke in this otherwise brutal creature's behavior. He isn't manipulated by Denham, he chooses to attack the village. Denham actually saves the day by using a gas bomb. The connection between these character changes is they all bolster the popular interpretation as a central theme. So how can that interpretation capture the true meaning of the original King Kong if fundamental elements of the story had to be altered by the remakes in order to make the theme compatible with the story? Further study only makes the popular interpretation less compelling. There are critical elements of the film entirely neglected by it. Anne Darrow, arguably the main protagonist of the story, has no place in the allegory. She doesn't act as an oppressor of nature nor a defender of it. The same applies to Jack Driscoll. He's just there. Then there's the idea of beauty killing the beast. It's established before the movie even starts, and cited by Denham throughout, all the way to the final line. This has nothing to do with the conflict of civilization against nature. It's referenced heavily in Peter Jackson's remake, but it makes no sense in its new context. What does the attractiveness of the environmentalists have to do with anything? The popular interpretation is only relevant to King Kong in a limited sense. There is clearly something much different the film is attempting to explore, something not honestly tackled by the later franchise. King Kong is quite a difficult film to analyze, because it is massively open to interpretation. In the DVD audio commentary, Ray Harryhausen makes the suggestion that it is something of an inkblot test. How you interpret it says more about you than the film. Well, I didn't drag you into this wordy video for nothing. Now that I have dismantled the popular interpretation, I shall, in spite of the odds, do my best to fill the void and dissect the meaning of King Kong. I think King Kong, above all else, is a commentary on the dynamic between men and women. Before the first frame of the movie is this card quoting an Arabian proverb, "And lo, the beast looked upon the face of beauty, and it stayed its hand from killing, and from that day it was as one dead." This is the key to the puzzle. This is the movie cueing us in to what it is about. The beast sees beauty, shows mercy, an uncharacteristic choice, and dies for it. The beauty, of course, is Anne Darrow, and the beast, Kong. As I've already stated, the popular interpretation of Kong representing mankind's destruction of nature contradicts this proverb, which clearly ties the beast's death not to its enemies, but its reaction to seeing the beauty. The proverb is explained in further detail by Denham when he tells Jack the central theme of his picture. He says, "A beast was a tough guy too. He could lick the world, but when he saw beauty, she got him. He went soft, he forgot his wisdom, and the little guys licked him." I've established that Kong is the villain, or at least the antagonist, of his story. He fuels the conflict, repeatedly threatens the well-being of the protagonists, and kills many innocents in the process. And yet, audiences cry when he dies. Why is this character so sympathetic? The tragedy of King Kong is not that he is misunderstood, but that he is recognized for what he is. Kong was the undisputed ruler of Skull Island, and he was a tyrant. The islanders, once a great people capable of building structural wonders, have been reduced to a small, primitive tribe confined to the smallest corner of the island. They have no means to advance, and the only way they can retain what little they have is by appeasing Kong with the finest of their women. Kong was in total control, but he was lonely. It's never outright stated, but we can clearly see there were no other Kongs on the island. Apart from this guy, but he didn't exist when this film was written. When Kong sees Anne on the sacrificial pedestal, he stays his hand from killing, and this choice dooms him. For quite possibly the first time in his life, Kong shows gentleness, or at least gentleness to the best of his ability. One of the biggest mistakes of Kong's characterization in the remakes is the friendship he forms with Anne. This implies there is hope that Kong and humanity can achieve peace with each other, a compromise. This is a total violation of the original character. He is entirely incompatible with humans. Anne will always fear and hate him because he can only interact with her on an animal's level. In his battle against mankind, there is no compromising. One side must dominate. As I already pointed out, the Islanders have lost this battle and have been reduced to something too small and too pathetic to be called a civilization. According to the monomyth of the hero's journey, the story should end when Jack rescues Anne and recrosses the threshold between worlds. But this would be a compromise on Kong's part. He defies the ending and comes after Anne, and, as Denham prophesied, he is beaten by the little guys. The story is unnaturally extended past the structure of the monomyth. In New York, Kong has lost his glory, thanks to his own doing, but this is still a compromise. He is alive and without Anne. So, he escapes, recaptures Anne, and continues his war on the human race. This time, cards are against him. The enemy is the home team, and Kong is gunned down by the airplanes. Humanity won, and it was a total, devastating victory. But don't forget, it wasn't the airplanes, it was Beauty killed the beast. Kong chose to reclaim Anne, leaving himself vulnerable to the gas bombs. The tragedy of King Kong is he tried to be something he wasn't. As long as he was a terrible beast, he was unstoppable. But he saw the beauty and wanted her. He tried to show her tenderness, but could only express it as a brutal animal would. He didn't realize it, but he was born to be the villain of his story. Why does this tragedy resonate with so many moviegoers? Possibly because we have no control over the circumstances we are born into. So many of us wish we were someone else, but pursuing this only leads to grief. You could say that Kong is inside each one of us. Obviously, the proverb describes Kong's story, but it also applies to Jack Driscoll. Remember when Denham tells him the theme of his picture? Here, Denham sees Jack as the beast. Jack appeared in the first scene, but his true introduction is when Anne meets him on the deck of the Venture. We see him yell at his crew, accidentally strike Anne across the jaw, then immediately ask, "What are you doing here?" This is shortly followed by him giving her his opinion of women on ships. They don't belong. Jack is a figurative beast, but like Kong, he develops an affection for Anne and looks out for her. Jack Driscoll, the last man to go sappy, falls in love and settles down. You could say Beauty killed, or at least tamed, the beast here. The only difference is, Jack seems to become stronger through this change. It is his love for Anne that enables him to do the impossible. This can be further extended to the crew of the Venture. They are described by Weston, the theatrical agent, as the toughest mugs he ever looked at. We don't see any of this in their treatment of Anne. They are all kind to her, and rush into the jungle without a second thought to save her, and many of them die for this. They are also beasts, who were doomed the moment they saw the beauty. The old Arabian proverb is acted out multiple times through the movie. It is treated as a law of nature. But what does it mean for Beauty to kill the beast? What are we supposed to take away from this? It's a question I have lost many hours of sleep over. During a conversation with Anne, Jack says, "Just being around's trouble. Women can't help being a bother. Made that way, I guess." He has a point. The mere presence of a woman, particularly a beautiful one, in an otherwise all-male environment, will throw the entire dynamic off course. Men naturally treat women differently than other men. On a smaller level, the entrance of such a woman into a man's life can turn his entire world upside down. This certainly happened to Jack and Kong. But if Anne unintentionally put both of them through the same paradigm shift, why did Jack live while Kong died? Perhaps because Jack was ready for the upheaval. He understood his feelings for Anne, the implications of expressing them, and was ready to reshape his life for her. Kong, conversely, was a true beast. He couldn't comprehend that he was the one endangering Anne, and was wholly incapable of changing his violent ways. A man who can weather the destruction a woman will wreak on his old way of life will, like Driscoll, become stronger because of her. But a man who is a monster, and must exercise cruelty and brutality to retain his power, will be weakened, crippled by this woman. That is how Beauty, not the airplanes, killed the beast. Thank you to those still watching for humoring me on my admittedly harebrained dissection of a movie about a big gorilla. Please share your thoughts on this in the comments. Did I touch upon something true, or was this just an inkblot test that revealed more about me than King Kong?